In a Seoul City office, the members of the National Security Council discuss the current situation in the region, and after the meeting, Jung Yun-baek, the presidential candidate, talks to Cha Jung-won, his defense secretary. Before leaving, the man hands his teammate an envelope and congratulates him on taking care of his daughter Kyung-min for so many years, while helping him throughout his political campaign. A few hours later, Jung-won starts taking his daughter to his sister's house, so that the young girl can stay with her until he returns from his business trip, but in the middle of the road, he ends up stopping at a gas station. After filling up the car, Jo Pak reveals that his customer will have to pay in cash, but when he notices that the guy has suspicious equipment, the man realizes that he is not a real employee of the place and leaves. Far from there, Yu Ra and her sister Mi Ran leave the city airport extremely stressed, having missed their flight to the golf tournament, but before they can leave, they are intercepted by an old lady, who tells them that the young woman looks a lot like her cousin. At that moment, the old woman's husband suddenly appears, causing the woman to try to flee the scene, and after almost being hit by one of the vehicles, she is rescued by the young women, who are confused about what is happening. The man thanks the girls for their help, and after calming his wife down, they leave, and the pair conclude that the old woman must have some kind of psychological syndrome. Sometime later, Mi Ran and Yu Ra continue their journey, and end up being surprised by a sports car speeding past. But the driver is nothing more than an influencer who is doing a live broadcast while driving madly around the area. As he's not paying enough attention to the road, the influencer ends up skidding his car, causing him to be hit by one of the vehicles and eliminated instantly. Thanks to this, all the other drivers start colliding with the cars in front of them, resulting in a gigantic chain of accidents across the bridge. Believing that the collisions have finally come to an end, one of the drivers decides to get out of his vehicle, but as he does so, the man notices a large truck coming towards him, and runs desperately. Unable to escape the collision, the truck driver ended up overturning the bridge, even pushing several cars several meters onto the site. Now that all the chaos is finally over, Yu Ra and Mi Ran try to cross the bridge, but end up being hit in the back of the vehicle, causing the sisters to get stuck in a traffic jam along with all the other drivers. On the other side of the track, one of the venue's security guards is communicating with his teammate while trying to understand the reason for all those simultaneous accidents. The problem is that the young man ends up getting distracted, which is why he is surprised by the claw of a tractor, which hits the roof of his vehicle, causing the employee to end up skidding. At the gas station, Jo Park is reprimanded by his boss, who orders him to pay for the damage he has caused to the establishment. During the discussion, the young man hears the emergency call on his tow truck, and concludes that Jung-won is probably stuck in the traffic jam with all the other drivers. So the man decides to go there so that he can charge the politician and avoid being fired by his boss. Despite the great danger, the soldiers in the military convoy decide to continue their journey, but at that moment, one of the truck wrecks ends up catching on the wheel of one of the vehicles, which loses control and flips over in an insane manner. At the same time, the other combatants are surprised by the wrecked truck, which causes another accident. Distracted by the accident, Jung-won doesn't notice the large tire coming towards him, and after the collision, the man decides to call Yun-baek, asking him to come to the scene before the locals start complaining. Realizing that the situation is getting more and more complicated, the man decides to go out to find out what's going on. And when he arrives at the central area of the accidents, he comes across two wounded soldiers, who are removing one of the victims from their vehicle. Concerned, the soldiers try to contact their teammates, and as they don't hear back, they set off in the direction of the rest of the convoy, so that they can check on the situation of the trapped dogs. When they arrive at the overturned truck, the military discover that the macabre dogs are missing, and noticing that their partners have been eliminated, they decide to cut off the communication signal in the area. Before leaving, one of the soldiers orders Jung-won to stay by the scientist's side, and so that the man can sit down, the man decides to take him to his car, and realizes that Kyung-min is no longer there. A few meters ahead, the teenager walks alone across the bridge, and while exploring the place, she comes across a dog banging its head against one of the railings, and tries to stop the animal from hurting itself. When he senses the girl's presence, the macabre dog becomes apprehensive, and to calm her down, Kyung-min offers her one of her treats, and realizes that the animal has the name E9. At that moment, Jung-won appears on the scene, and after scaring the animal, which runs away from them, he takes the young woman back to his car. As he does so, the man notices that the soldiers are preparing a helicopter to rescue the scientist, and asks them to explain what is going on. However, the soldiers don't listen to the man, causing the argument to become increasingly aggressive and Jung-won to be handcuffed. Meanwhile, the rest of the dogs begin to wander the streets of the bridge, leaving everyone extremely confused, as they have no idea where these animals came from. Furious, Jung-won orders the evil scientist to let him go, but Dr. Yong refuses and tells him that the young man and his daughter will be much safer if they are by his side. With that, one of the soldiers puts on his combat armor, and the scientist initiates the attack protocol, causing all the bizarre dogs to start running to the soldier's location. Quickly, the man tackles the animals while trying to throw them into the truck, but during the confrontation, Young realizes that E9 is refusing to face the fighter, which leaves him extremely confused. Despite this, the military man manages to unite all the remaining dogs inside the vehicle, allowing the scientist to end the protocol and the macabre dogs to act normally again. At this point, the helicopter finally arrives on the scene, and after locating the vehicle where the animals are gathered, a group of soldiers descends onto the bridge, along with a large military container. Nearby, the tow truck attendant is finishing hitching up the car of one of the security guards, but thanks to the noise caused by the aircraft, Jody, his pet, starts running towards the soldiers. Confused by the situation, Jung-won tries to stop Dr. Yong from going to the helicopter, and orders the scientist to tell him what's going on before he leaves. However, the man refuses to waste any more time in that place, and suggests that the young man ask his boss about Project Silence. In military trucks, the modified dogs are transported to the container, but when he notices that Jody is getting closer and closer to the macabre animals, and that her owner has been intercepted by the soldiers, Kyung-min decides to go to the little dog so that she can rescue her. Realizing that E9 is not moving towards the rest of the group, Young asks the combatants to take the captured dogs away, so that they can leave the bridge safely and stop the last animal more easily. The helicopter then takes off to leave the site, but at that moment, one of the soldiers sees the E9 control chip on the ground and tries to alert his teammates. The problem is that it's too late, as the mutant dog has already hidden itself in the roof of the container, allowing it to carry out a surprise attack on one of the soldiers and causing the compartment to be knocked back onto the bridge. On noticing the invasion of the aircraft, the co-pilot tries to neutralize the animal, but E9 is extremely fast and manages to eliminate him in a few seconds. Immediately afterwards, the diabolical dog attacks the helicopter pilot, and after being attacked by him, the soldier loses control of the vehicle, which crashes into one of the bridge structures. Because of this, the aircraft hangs between the steel cables, and thanks to its propellers, which continue to spin rapidly, the metal ropes begin to emit an extremely high-pitched noise, which begins to affect the dogs' heads. Thanks to the noise, the animals' control chips begin to fail, and when Young realizes that the creatures are going to lose control completely, he is terrified, as they have no way of defending themselves. Trying to understand the reason for all that fear, Jung-won asks his daughter to stay where she is, and runs to the scientist, who reveals that all the dogs will be totally out of control. Suddenly, the noise of the cables awakens the mutant dogs, who start attacking the container door, since they now have 116 targets to eliminate around the bridge. With that, the macabre animals manage to free themselves from the metal box, and after running at high speed towards the drivers, they start attacking everyone in sight, eliminating several civilians in a few seconds. Soon after, one of the animals lunges at Young, who manages to dodge it, but ends up getting his leg bitten, causing him to fall to the ground and lose his laptop. To rescue him, one of the soldiers shocks his target, but is quickly eliminated by one of the other dogs. Now that they are together, the survivors are trying to flee far from the scene of the attack so that they can protect themselves from the threats. In the midst of the chaos that the animals are causing, Yu-ra realizes that her sister is trapped by the crowd of people, and to rescue her, the girl takes one of her golf clubs and uses it to strike a blow at one of the dogs. Over time, the panic among the civilians grows as the mutant dogs eliminate dozens of people all over the bridge. Trying to escape the scene, Jo Pak runs to his truck, but is surprised by one of the animals and tries to escape its attacks, causing him to get separated from the rest of the group. With that, the other survivors manage to start one of the vehicles, and before they leave, Kyung-min pulls the handbrake, while her father opens the trunk, allowing the winchman to throw himself inside the car. The problem is that the wreckage of the helicopter caused a huge fire on the bridge, preventing the group from escaping. In order to protect themselves from the attacks, the bus driver opens the doors of his vehicle, allowing all the remaining survivors to gather together so that they are not eliminated. Trying to find a way to communicate with the authorities, Jung-won takes the scientist's radio, but while trying to contact the military, the group is surprised by the dogs, who begin to surround them more and more. Inside the bus, the survivors observe the group trapped in the car and discuss how they can be rescued. At the security department, Yun Baek questions the officials, who tell him that those dogs were developed to eliminate criminals, but the project was scrapped due to serious security problems. Because of this, the guinea pigs were being transported to another military facility so that they could be disposed of for having failed the tests. At this point, Jung-won manages to contact the president via Yang's radio, and learns that they must get out of there as soon as possible, as the area is filled with extremely toxic gases. Afterwards, the secretary said that when they are taken back, they will be able to denounce the practices carried out by the military, so that they are guaranteed to win the elections. However, Yun Baek says this won't be possible, as the Silence Project has been approved by the same department that the men represent. During the conversation, the remaining wreckage of the helicopter ends up exploding, scaring the dogs away from the scene, and taking advantage of the opportunity, the bus driver approaches the survivors and uses his horn to get their attention. Jung-won then uses some damp cloths to protect the group from the smoke, and after getting out of the vehicle, they run to the bus. After rescuing the last few people on the loose, the driver quickly drives away from the explosion, which is getting louder and louder due to the cars stopped by the bridge. Suddenly, the steel cables begin to snap, causing part of the bridge to collapse, but despite all the destruction, the survivors manage to escape the disaster. Just behind the bus, E9 meets up with the group of mutant dogs, who are waiting until a gap appears and they can attack the civilians. Inside the vehicle, Jung-won explains the situation to the passengers, and after lying about the origin of the dogs, he asks them not to panic. Upon hearing this, the other survivors begin to suspect the allegations, but Jo Pak reinforces the young man's claims, making people start to believe the story. Soon afterwards, Jung-won talks to the tow truck driver in private and tells him that if he continues to help him in this situation, he will be extremely rewarded. After a few minutes, the tactical team appears at the entrance to the bridge, and after reaching the bus, they begin the evacuation. However, the politician asks the survivors to remain at the site, and asks why the dogs haven't been eliminated yet. Yun Baek explains that the animals are missing, so they can take the opportunity to rescue the victims. So the civilians leave the vehicle and start walking to the city while being escorted by the military, who don't realize that they are being accompanied by the macabre dogs. Halfway there, the soldiers start to hear an alarm from one of the cars and decide to check it out to make sure no survivors are left behind. At the same time, the same thing is happening on the other side of the bridge, causing the military to become increasingly divided. Suddenly, the pair of soldiers are attacked by the dogs, and after eliminating all the targets around the site, they start running towards the survivors, who are completely surrounded by the animals. Before they could react, all the soldiers were attacked by the mutant dogs, causing widespread panic among the civilians, who began to run desperately. While being finished off by one of the enraged dogs, one of the soldiers ends up shooting Mi-ran in the leg, who falls to the ground, incapacitated, and noticing that her sister is about to be eliminated, Yu-ra runs over to the girl and blocks the creature's bite. In the midst of the chaos, the old woman ends up going into another one of her hallucinations, and believing the animal to be her old pet, she walks over to it. In doing so, she is instantly attacked by the monster, but it receives a shot from one of the remaining soldiers, who is eliminated immediately afterwards. Witnessing all those simultaneous attacks, Jung-won goes into a state of shock, and noticing that his daughter is no longer by his side, he despairs, and the distraction causes the man to be attacked by one of the creatures. During the confrontation, Jo Pak hides under one of the vehicles so that he won't be seen by the dog, but Jody starts barking, causing the animal to stop attacking the politician and try to capture the little dog. At the same time, Jung-won realizes that Kyung-min has been caught by one of the monsters, and rushes to her aid. After reuniting, the pair are saved by one of the soldiers, who orders them to flee while he is eliminated by the macabre dogs. The man takes his daughter to the trunk of one of the vehicles, but when he notices that he has left his radio behind, he decides to go back for it, and even manages to find one of the soldiers' weapons. Soon after, Jung-won comes across the only remaining survivors, and Jo Pak explains that he has already revealed the whole truth about the mutant animals. While waiting for her father to return, Kyung-min is found by Young, who tells her that E9 is the mother of all the other dogs. The scientist explains that in order for the dogs to be strong enough in combat, they forced E9 to watch dozens of her puppies being eliminated and discarded before her eyes, causing the dog to accumulate an enormous amount of hatred. Finally, the doctor reveals that the dogs aren't doing all this for fun, but in revenge for the puppies being eliminated. In the center of the bridge, the survivors light several torches and flares, and start walking towards the city while Jung-won talks to his boss, revealing that everyone already knows the real situation of Project Silence. When they reach the bus, the survivors are betrayed by Young, who prevents Kyung-min from opening the door. Trying to prevent everyone from being eliminated by the evil dogs, Jo Pak uses his drink to unleash several flaming attacks with his mouth, driving the creatures away in true Dalsim style. In order to force the scientist to let go of his daughter, Jung-won throws the flare on the ground, creating a glow that makes the dogs back away and stuns the man, allowing the group to get on the bus. Soon afterwards, Joe Pak uses his master key to start the vehicle, and together the survivors try to leave the place. At the security department, Yun Baek receives a message from the minister, saying that he will allow the man to choose between letting the civilians be eliminated by the dogs or allowing them to escape, but the news about the experiments will be spread throughout the country, preventing his inauguration as president. When they reach the end of the bridge, Jung-won asks the military to finish off the animals, but as they receive no response, the survivors decide to plan a new way to escape, as they know the bridge will collapse in a few hours. So they lure the dogs into the bus using the radio, while hiding quietly in the luggage compartment. During the strategy, the old woman ends up perishing due to heavy blood loss, but the civilians remain focused, and after trapping the creatures, they get out of the vehicle. However, the old lady's husband refuses to leave, and when he notices that the evil dogs are opening the bus hatch, he decides to stay to hold the passage, and orders Jung-won to flee as quickly as possible. Quickly, Joe Pak pulls the young man out of the vehicle, and to prevent the monsters from attacking the rest of the group, the old man closes the door of the luggage compartment. When they reach the end of the bridge, the survivors realize that the rescue team hasn't shown up, and Young says that Yun Baek would never help them get out alive, since he was the one who approved the Silence Project. At that moment, Young finds his briefcase with the laptop, and after restoring the program, the group devises a plan, where Jung-won will enter the metal box, and lure the dogs so that the survivors escape in Joe Pak's tow truck. Soon afterwards, Young begins to reprogram the chips alongside Kyung-min, and asks the sisters to position themselves for a round of golf, while the winchman prepares to run to the vehicle. With that, the scientist starts the protocol once again, and Jung-won begins to speak loudly, and when he receives the alert that the dogs have already been attracted by the noise, Yu-ra hits the glass of the bus with the golf balls. Despite the earthquakes on the bridge, the young woman manages to annoy the animals enough, and when she notices that the creatures are surrounding the military truck, Joe Pak runs to retrieve the master key, but he is surprised by E9, who begins to chase him. When she arrives at the vehicle, the monster grabs one of Yang's legs, but when she hears the cries of her puppies, who are about to be wiped out by the collapse of the bridge along with Jung-won, she rushes to rescue them. Soon, the structure of the site begins to collapse once again, causing all the mutant dogs to fall into the sea, while the man is suspended among the rubble. Realizing that he has no chance of survival, Jung-won asks his daughter to leave without him, but Kyung-min doesn't listen and runs to the cabin. In a panic, the man shouts for the young woman not to come any closer, because E9 is right in front of her, trying to pull one of her puppies out of the rubble. Just then, the bridge begins to shake again, and Kyung-min ends up being hit by one of the vehicles. At the same time, E9 realizes that the last of her puppies is about to fall into the sea, and jumps in to try to rescue it. Jung-won ends up dangling from the truck, but before the man can fall, the young woman manages to reach her father and shouts for Joe Pak to pull the vehicle back. Quickly, the winchman rescues the pair, and now that they are reunited, they try to cross the toxic barrier, while Yun Baek and his entire department watch everything through the security cameras. As they are about to enter the gas cloud, the survivors cover their faces, and Joe Pak runs at full speed along the bridge, which is collapsing more and more. Despite the earthquake, the group manages to reach the safe zone and sets off towards Seoul, where they encounter a huge crowd of people awaiting their arrival. After being received by the paramedics, Jung-won goes to Yun Baek, and after punching the man in the face in front of all the reporters, the man reveals all the evil deeds carried out by the candidate, and is supported by Young, who has recorded evidence of the entire Silence Project. Realizing that he no longer has a chance of winning the election, Yun Baek leaves, being booed by all the locals. Far away, E9 takes the only remaining puppy to dry land, and together, the last mutant dogs watch the Seoul Bridge, while planning a new way to take revenge on human beings. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.